I'm not gonna let these old white men who have never worn pointe shoes before tell me that I'm wrong and just making stuff up for the sake of being difficult. I didn't want to have to make this. I did not want to make this video, but every interaction that I have had with people at Nikolay has been extremely dismissive and invalidating and gaslighty, and I feel like I'm going insane. So this is mostly just to document my experiences, just to prove that, like, I am not making things up. So, unless you have been loyally wearing the Grishko/Nikolay brand, as I have been for over 15 years, if you are not familiar with this, they were originally operating under the name Grishko. When they were Grishko, there was the Grishko 2007. That was my shoe. I loved that shoe. It fit like a glove. It looked nice on my foot. That was my shoe for years. And then I noticed that they started coming in really weird. It was not looking right on my foot. The shanks were crooked. The vamps were asymmetrical. The 2007 features a medium U-shaped vamp, so it kind of like cups the bottom of your foot where the shoe opens, and instead they were coming in as this tight V-shaped vamp that like engulfed my foot and made my foot look very unflattering. I also couldn't articulate my metatarsals the whole way. It made my instep look very flat, which it is. I do have a low profile foot, which is one of the reasons that even a centimeter on the profile or the vamp of a shoe can make a huge difference on my foot, and I will notice it immediately. The drawstring casing was coming up so high and so tight, it was actually cutting into my skin. And this had been happening for years. So I would get other shoes that were based off of the 07 last. The last just means it's like, okay, here's our 07 model. And anything based off of that last is like an offshoot of it. You know, it's similar, should fit the same, should feel the same, should look the same, but has some very slightly different features. So like one might have a more supportive, higher wings. One might be softened at the tip so it doesn't make as much noise on stage. One might have like a slightly lower or a slightly higher heel. But I do have experience wearing other shoes that are based off of that last, and that will be important later. For the longest time, I would just place orders on Discount Dance. Discount Dance was always like the easiest, most reliable place to order my shoes from. So the fact that I could just go on Discount Dance and order a pair of Grishkos and get them in and they were reliable, like that was fine. That was great. It was easy, seamless transaction, fine. They started coming in weird. And I was like, okay, I guess I can't order these online anymore because I have no way of knowing how they're going to look and feel on my foot. And the very, very unfortunate thing about pointe shoes is you don't always know how the shoe is going to perform until you have it sewn to your specifications and you actually try wearing it. Dancers' feet, the way they prepare their shoes, the way they pad their shoes, the way they sew them, the way, like, it's so unique. It's almost as unique as how you take your coffee. So a lot of the time, I'm not even seeing the full defects of these shoes until after I've sewn them, worn them a couple of times, and now I'm seeing how they're performing on my foot after they mold to my foot a little bit. And it's only then I start recognizing that, like, this is not feeling like how it should. This is not feeling like how it used to feel. And at that point, you can't return them because you've already sewn them and worn them and they can't resell them. So you just gotta like bite the bullet and deal with it, which I don't like doing. But if you're running a, professional rehearsal schedule, you can exhaust the life of a shoe in a week or two. So even if the shoe is fitting kind of janky, you just deal with it for a week or two until you get a new one. But it was getting to the point where every single pair coming in was just fitting so ugly and not the way that it used to be. And when I lived in New York City, I was able to physically go to the Nikolay store, the Grishko store, but they rebranded. While all of this stuff was going on, there was also that whole like debacle about the US-based distributor selling shoes that were made in China and not of the same quality. So it is possible that during that time, I was actually getting defective shoes that were still labeled Grishko, but I didn't know it. But somewhere along the way, it was made public knowledge, like it was almost like a public service announcement. All of the dance magazines, Pointe magazines, there was like an official announcement kind of explaining or trying to demystify all of this confusion around the Grishko Nikolay. So it was like, you have to make sure your shoe is stamped with made in Russia. It can't just say handmade. It has to say made in Russia, or else it is not an authentic Grishko shoe. Also, because of this, they had to change their name because they wanted to, I guess, distance themselves from this faulty or defective Grishko US-based company. So now the official store with the official made in Russia shoes is Nikolay. And now Nikolay calls this shoe, the one that I really love, it is now called the 3007. They're supposedly like kind of the same thing. It's, you know, based off of the same model. And so I was like, okay, I guess going forward I have to get Nikolay 3007s. And in the beginning, they were fine. They felt just as comfortable as like the OG 2007s, the way that I remember them. I noticed that Discount Dance, you know, changed the name on the website. So now I was sure that I was getting Nikolay 3007s. I think the store in New York City, the Manhattan store, I think they officially changed their name too. It was no longer the Grishko store. I think it was the Nikolay store. But once again, I'm starting to get these shoes that don't fit right. They don't look right on my feet. And like I said, with my foot type, even a millimeter difference in the vamp, in the drawstring casing, in the profile of the shoe makes a big difference on my foot. There was a time where I did not even own slippers. I was only dancing in pointe shoes. And I was not able to dance in slippers with a demi-pointe. I didn't have this flexibility in my big toe because of a thing. And it was only after having surgery that I was able to go back to slippers again. So I had my surgery. I think I did a couple of other performances in pointe shoes after that. But then I joined a contemporary ballet company that did not require pointe shoes, or they required pointe shoes for only a couple of their pieces. So I was mostly back in slippers again. I will admit there was a hiatus where I was not really consistently practicing in pointe. And then of course there was the pandemic, so nobody was performing anything anywhere for a while. But I did eventually start trying to get back into pointe shoes and starting to train again and starting to look for new performance opportunities that would require, you know, being proficient in pointe again. But again, same thing. I would order these shoes online. The vamp would come in fitting weird. It didn't look right on my foot. It was cutting into my skin. I did actually try to switch to Gainer Mindens. You know, I was so fed up with the way that these Nikolays were coming in and looking on my foot, and I went to like a Gainer Minden store because a lot of people suggested that I try Gainer Minden, and that was a whole weird thing. I made a YouTube episode complaining about my Gainer Mindens, how much I hated them, how awful they felt, and that I just had to go back to wearing Nikolays, and I just had to see them in person before I could buy them. But now, living out here in rural Pennsylvania, the nearest dance store to me is 80 miles away. That dance store does thankfully ship, but they also have a very limited supply. Right now, everywhere has a limited supply. I can't go on Discount Dance and order a Nikolay 3007 in my size and width and shank. It's out of stock. Every other dance store that I look at will allow me to complete the transaction, and then they'll email me the next day saying, oh, hey, your shoe is on back order for 12 weeks. We'll ship it as soon as we get it. And I'm doing a nutcracker. I need pointe shoes that I can rehearse in and look nice on my foot for when I'm on stage. So it's been really frustrating going to all these different websites and not getting the shoe. This whole thing really started when I found a dancewear store located in like Orlando, Florida. And they did not have the 3007, but they had a shoe, I think it's called the Dream Pointe. It's also called the Allure, and it is based off of the '07 Last. So as I said, I'm familiar with shoes that are based off of the '07 Last. I prefer the straight up OG '07, no bells and whistles, but if my only option is an Allure that's based off the '07 Last, if my only option is a Pro or a Flex that is based off of that Last. I even tried the Nova once, which is, I think, based off the '07 Last. I didn't like that one for the same reasons. The vamps and the profiles. Like, it's specifically meant to have medium U-shaped vamp with like a medium profile. I'm browsing around this dancewear website. There's a page that's like the Nikolay 3007, authentic, made in Russia, stamp on the heel, blah blah blah. Not in stock, okay? So I, click over to the Allure based off of the same Last. They have it in my size, my width. There's only one shank option. And I'm like, okay, if it's in stock, I'll take it. Like, I'm desperate. I order the shoe. I get the shoe. Fits me like a loafer. I sent pictures to my friends who are Pointe shoe fitters. They're like, this does not look like an Allure to me. I don't know what the kind of shoe they gave you, but it should not look like that on your foot. And I'm like, I agree. It looks horrible. I look like models doing ballet in this shoe. And I looked at the heel and it did not say made in Russia. So immediately I think, uh-oh, I got one of the like knockoff shoes, the fake shoe. It doesn't have the stamp that guarantees authenticity. And you know what? I've just been biting my tongue for years. I've just been getting the bad shoes and dealing with it. I've been so unsatisfied with the consistency of these shoes for so many years, but for some reason still continuing to crawl back. And at this point, I had just had it. So I left a review on the website. I was like, these aren't authentic. They don't have the stamp that is advertised on that page. And they fit really poorly and they look like a loafer on my foot. That's it. It was just a couple of sentences. I didn't feel like going into detail. Like, I'm so fed up with it being so difficult to just get the tools to do my damn job. So the president of this dancewear store immediately emails me, and it is very aggressive, just categorically denying everything, just touting the reputation, we only stock authentic stuff, you can't make these accusations against us. We work so closely with the head guy of Nikolay here in Florida, Peter Orlov, who is a whole other freaking, like, he's really the ultimate pinnacle of this story and the main reason why I am choosing to leave Nikolay for real now. Like, you would think if you work in the realm of customer service, you would say something like, I'm so sorry these shoes did not meet your standards. Let me know what I can do to help. Do you want a coupon? Do you want us to replace them? Do you want, like, instead of just saying, no, you're wrong, everything we do is authentic, we have a reputation to uphold, everybody loves us, you're just, like, I'm not just being a troll. So I did respond. I was like, look, I have been wearing these shoes for 15 years. I know how they look on my foot. This pair was ill-fitting, and this is not the first strike. Like, I have sought these shoes out from so many other places, and they always come in ill-fitting. And, like, your own website features the shoe having the made in Russia stamp. So you realize that this is an important marketing tactic to advertise the fact that you have an authentic shoe. So what am I supposed to think when I get a shoe that doesn't have that stamp that you have advertised on your website? So I'm on this Pointe shoe exchange group in Facebook. The first thing that started it is me asking, like, hey, is it true that Nikolay shoes no longer have the stamp? I got a pair, I thought it was authentic, but it was fitting me really poorly, reminding me of back in the days when I was getting like the bad Grishko shoes, and I have no way of knowing if this is like a real authentic shoe or not. And I also did say the president was kind of aggressive about it, and I don't know if John in Florida wears Pointe shoes regularly, but it just felt extremely invalidating and gaslighty to be like told that I'm wrong, even though I know how these shoes should look and feel on my feet. So the general consensus is they stopped stamping the shoe in 2022. The shoes with the stamp are now increasingly rare because they just don't exist anymore. So you had a whole year, almost 2 years now, to make the distinction on your website that this is no longer the case. The shoes are not going to have that made in Russia stamp on the outsole. That is a deceitful business practice. To advertise the authenticity of a product with a certain feature and then not deliver that. You're not delivering the product that you say you are. Whether it is still an authentic shoe or not, it is misleading and it is confusing. All of that aside, this Mr. President of this dance store drags in Mr. Nikolay, general manager guy. I don't even know what his actual position is. His name is Peter Orlov. And he is also weirdly not receptive. He's just saying how, oh, our sales have gone up. Our numbers have gone up. We're so successful. We're the highest demand shoe. Okay, don't you think that maybe the demand is exceeding your supply and that's why everybody is having trouble getting your shoes in stock? And also maybe your shoemakers are so overwhelmed with this sudden influx of orders that they have to rush through their shoes now, and that because they're rushing through it, there are going to be more variations and more mistakes and more little details that are not as consistent because they can no longer spend the time working slowly and ensuring the quality is consistent. Like, don't you think those two things are related? And on this same Pointe Shoe Exchange website, so many people have the same complaints. Whether it's dancers or mothers of dancers, they're noticing the shoes come in fitting weird, fitting like a completely different model. They just can't get a regular supply of them. And of course, none of these comments get acknowledged. So during all of this, I am getting personal DMs, PMs, private message, whatever you call them. And these messages mostly consist of professional dancers or former professional dancers, or even some people that I used to dance with that are now like Pointe shoe fitters and stuff. They've been telling me that Peter Orlov is a particularly unpleasant person to work with. He's always very retaliatory, and it's not even worth it to get into it with him. And that's probably why a lot of people on the Pointe shoe group are also not commenting in support of me. And among these messages is somebody that had like the same awful experiences that I'm having and shifted over to a brand called Vertice, which is a woman-owned company, and one of the designers, like a Pointe shoe engineer who previously worked for Grishko, now works at Vertice, and that there's never any supply issues and everybody that tries the shoes loves them. And I'm thinking, great, if the engineer that was behind the original Grishkos that I loved so much is now at Vertice and I can get a shoe that fits similarly and looks nice and have a smooth transition, great, I'm all for it. So I go on this Pointe shoe exchange or Pointe shoe Facebook group one last time to just ask for general advice. I'd be like, hey, does anyone have any advice switching from Nikolay to Vertice? And this is a common question that does come up on the Pointe shoe exchange group. Like, hey, I've worn this shoe, but I'm thinking of switching to this shoe. Any tips? It's not an uncommon question. So I ask this question. I'm like, hey, I'm really trying to change shoes. I'm having a lot of trouble getting consistent Nikolays. Every store around me either has 0 shoes left or only 1 shoe left and cannot give me a restock date. There's only 1 dance store in an 80-mile radius of me. And when I called them and said, hey, are you getting any more of these shoes? The woman on the phone just said, I don't know. I don't even think we're going to be getting these Nikolay shoes anymore because they can't give us a restock date. So like, I don't even think we're going to have them anymore. So I mentioned that in my post. I was like, the one store by me told me that they weren't even going to have Nikolay shoes anymore. So like, I need a new shoe. So Peter Orlov shows up, accuses me of being a plant, accuses me of being a troll. And I'm like, I'm not trolling. Like, this is the number I called. This is the store in Altoona, Pennsylvania that I had a phone call with. I had a very lovely lady. I had a very pleasant conversation with her, actually. This is not me trying to smear the store. Like, she was very helpful. Called up, I was like, look, I'm just trying to make sure you actually have it because a lot of online stores say they have it and then they don't. And could I also trouble you to take the shoes out of the box and tell me if it says made in Russia, either on the outsole or with a sticker on the inside? And she did all those things for me. She was very lovely. And she asked me like, why the distinction? Like what's going on? And I gave her like a brief summary of like all the trouble and the confusion of things with the Grishko, the US distributor, and now the Nikolay, and now it's got to be made in Russia and blah blah blah, but how they're getting so hard to find. And that's when she said, yeah, we cannot get an estimated ship date on these Nikolay Pointe shoes, so we just may not stock them anymore. That's what I was told on the phone. So when I said that in the Facebook group, Peter Orlov goes and calls the Altoona, Pennsylvania store. Now the owner of the Pennsylvania store is in the Facebook group. Like, I don't think you've ever stepped foot in my store. No, I haven't, but my students have stepped foot in your store. And whoever your Pointe shoe fitter is does a really job, because my students can't even stand in their Pointe shoes that they get from you. So do not start accusing me of being incompetent when you are injuring my students. So I'm in this group, under my post, trying to figure out how I can switch from Nikolay to Vertice. How do I do it? And a lot of people in the comments seem to think that this is a convince me to stay with Nikolay post, and they start saying, oh, I have a pair, I have a pair, I have a pair, I can help you, I can help you. And all of them say the same thing. I have one pair. I have one pair. And then I say, okay, you have one pair. What about after that, when I need another pair? When you are running a professional rehearsal schedule, you can exhaust the life of a Pointe shoe in 1 week. Oh my God, look, my eyelid is twitching now because of the stress of all of this. Like, it should not be this stressful to get a fucking shoe. So yes, the people in this Facebook group were very helpful and very forthcoming. Both eyelids are twitching now. Oh my God. Some of them worked for Nikolay, some of them just owned dance stores. Some people were able to search inventory countrywide. So yes, the people within these Facebook groups were very helpful, very forthcoming. They did that work and the labor and the effort of searching for me and then giving me, you know, the store. But every single time and every single store, it was they have one left. Let's say I buy that one pair, then what? When is the next time you get a restock? They don't know. Or it's something like 10 to 12 weeks of back order. I cannot wait 12 weeks for a new pair of Pointe shoes when I have a nutcracker coming up in 9 weeks, and I need to be rehearsing in Pointe and all that time in between. So this means now that if I want a consistent supply of Nikolay Pointe shoes in my size and my width, I have to, every week, every time I want a new pair of shoes, I have to search a store somewhere in the country. I have to call the store to confirm that they actually have it in stock, because a lot of the times the online inventory is not up to date. They'll say they have the shoe, you place the order, surprise, they don't have the shoe. Confirm they actually have my size and my width in stock, which is usually where I run out of luck, because I guess most of the dancers have the same size and width foot, because that seems to be like the most popular size and width that sells out the quickest. I have to ask them to take the shoe out of the box, verify if it has the stamp, and also if I really want to be proactive or prophylactic about it, I would ask them to take the shoes out of the box, put them side by side so I can see the shape of the vamp and the way the drawstring sits and the profile of the shoe. Then I probably have to make a whole new account with this new store just so I can complete the transaction, and then wait, you know, depending on where they are, I could be waiting a whole nother like 7 to 10 business days to actually get the shoe in my mailbox. And then I have to sew it, wear it for a few times, and then see how it actually molds to my foot and see if it actually feels and performs the way I need it to. I have to do this every time now. It should not be this stressful. It should not be this time consuming just to get my shoe. No other brand right now requires this type of hunt, this type of wild goose chase, just to get a consistent supply of shoes. That compounded with how much of a jerk Peter Orlov has been, not just to me, but apparently to a lot of other people in the dance world that I have talked to. They say they have the misfortune of having to interact with him once in a while, and I should just run the other way. Maybe if Mr. Peter Orlov was a little bit more forthcoming and a little bit more receptive to customer feedback, and admitting that, like, yeah, the shoes come in inconsistent, you know, like, instead of, no, we're the best, we do everything the best. I have left every interaction feeling invalidated and gaslit and like dismissed. Like you see the stress, like I'm shaking. I should not be shaking just by trying to give feedback about a shoe coming in ill-fitting. Like that's part of having a business, especially if your business has a handmade product. Like admit that they're handmade, they are prone to human error. You might be overloading your shoemakers because of this sudden high demand and you can't keep up. Like just admit that they're coming in bad, and I am not the only person with this complaint. It just so happened that I'm the only person to start talking about it and not backing down. I find myself representing a lot of other dancers or parents of dancers having the same problems, but I'm just tired of eating shit and grinning about it. Like, I'm too old to give a fuck anymore. I'm not gonna let these old white men who have never worn pointe shoes before tell me that I'm wrong and just making stuff up for the sake of being difficult. And like I said, I did not want to make this video. I do not want to speak poorly about Grishko or Nikolay because they have been my shoe for the longest time. And there are other Nikolay or Grishko ambassadors and fitters that are lovely. General retailers and people that work for Nikolay that have also been so forthcoming, so understanding, so helpful. Even when I was getting the stores in person in Manhattan at the Nikolay store, the workers there admitted flat out, yeah, the shoes have been coming in weird. We don't know how to fix it, but you're not the only person to say that. This has been a complaint. So like, just all you have to do, Peter Orlov, is admit the shoes are problematic. You're dropping the ball, whether it's you or your shoemakers or somebody running the joint, you're dropping the ball. Don't just double down in your numbers and record profits and growth at me. Do you really think dancers care? Record profits usually means stolen wages or exploitation of workers. So it does not make me feel all warm and happy inside to see that you have record profits despite not being able to put out a consistent supply. I don't care about numbers. Dancers don't care about your growth and profits. We care about getting the tools that we need to do our job safely and proficiently and consistently. It's a personal record of what I've been going through. It's also a public record, accessible to the public. If anybody else has been going through these same problems and also being gaslit, thinking that you're insane because you know your foot, you know how a shoe is supposed to fit on your foot, and then you get something completely different and people just tell you, no, you're wrong. So I'm probably going to get like a cease and desist or a lawsuit saying that I'm being defamatory, or Mr. Orlov himself is just going to show up in the comments and try to refute everything. As long as he has the last word, right? But I don't care. This is where I'm at, and I have to officially leave Nikolay just because of every interaction I've had. Just because of all the frustration. It should not be this stressful. I should not feel this afraid. It should not be this confusing or frustrating or time-consuming just to get a shoe. Like I said, no other brand is having these problems where I have to go on a wild goose chase to nail down the one remaining shoe that is in a store and then wait 12 weeks for them to restock. I really do hope that one day they get their together and that the shoes start coming in nice and consistent and the way that I remember them being again, the way that they used to be that made me a loyal customer in the first place. Like, these people think I'm just being a troll, like just being a Karen, just for the sake of being difficult. Like, I get joy out of doing this. No, I was a loyal customer for over 15 years, despite the problems that have been ongoing, and just kept eating and staying quiet about it. And now, after years, when I finally decide to say, hey, this has been a problem, people at Nikolay, Peter Orlov is just like, no, you're just being a about it. Like, okay, then bye.